All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are doing the Grants Pass Public Safety Levy Educational Forum today. My name is Josie Malloy. I am the President and CEO for the Grants Pass and Josephine County Chamber of Commerce, and I will be the moderator today. On our panel, we have Councilor Valerie Lovelace, Councilor Dennis Roler, and City Budget Committee Chair Tom Bradbeer. So thank you for joining us. The format today is we'll have a short presentation from our panelists, and then we'll move into questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Valerie Lovelace.
Okay, as you know, I'm Councilor Valerie Lovelace. I am also the treasurer for the Grants Pass Citizens for Public Safety, which is here to promote the levy. Just a little bit of information as to what the levy is, because I think it's important for people to understand that it is a part of our operational budget, that 50% right now of public safety is paid for by the $4.13 permanent levy. On top of that, we have a local option levy, which is currently $1.79 that is set to expire on June of 2021. That has been in place for the last 11 years, and we have asked for a 10-cent increase to help to pay for increased costs. So that $1.89 is approximately 22% of the operational funding for public safety, and the other 28% comes from the general fund. So if this does not pass and we do not have a levy, we will have truly a crisis in our public safety funding. So it's really imperative that this passes. And with that, I'll pass it off to Dennis, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I was just going to say that I think it's important to for voters to realize that we've held the rate the same for 12 years. And the question I always ask is, you know, what else do you know that's stayed the same in price for 12 years? And we just got to the point now where it was depleting our general fund, and to where we didn't have money for other things either, like parks. A lot of money comes out of, you know, like parks, things like that come out of the general fund, and we can't just afford to keep tapping away for public safety and then not have any money for parks and things like that. So this is critical, and it's also, like I said, we've managed to hold the same rate for 12 years. It's just now we're kind of up against the wall as far as trying to keep that. And we realize it might be tough times for some people, but we just have to keep providing the same services we have for a long time. And I think you can see just by the building that we occupy now that the departments, you know, had had good times to where they, you know, we didn't have a bond or float a bond for anything, the building itself or anything. We just we paid for that with interagency loans and things, and so we don't really have to worry about those things. But we've added on other services too as we went along. We have more you know, community service officers. We also have younger workers we call cadets that are going to help us patrol some of our parks and downtown and things like that, so that we don't you know, have any problems as far as downtown goes.
Tom, did you want to add anything? Tom, you're muted.
Am I still muted? Okay, I'm sorry. Valerie, I'd like to start out by thanking the Chamber and Josie for sponsoring this forum. I think it's very important to find ways to get the word out. My apologies, it's the technology. It's very important to have a video forum given the situation that we face in the community, and I just want to express my appreciation to the Chamber and to you, Josie, for sponsoring this forum. I also want to acknowledge that this has been a very difficult period for small businesses. There is so much that is going on around us today that many small businesses are facing very significant challenges and difficulty carrying on with their enterprise. So given that, I think the increase that the council has asked for in the public safety levy is quite reasonable and really quite affordable. And I think as we go through this discussion, we can also review some of the benefits that we receive as a community as a result of our investment in public safety. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to join with the councilors in responding to your questions.
All right, great. Thank you for the introduction, everyone. We are going to now move into the questions. So the first question, which you guys have already kind of talked about, is why did the council select the $1.89 rate?
I'm going to jump in here because it was quite a process. It took us, I would say, a couple of months at least to talk about the fact that we knew that city came to us with a request for $2.11 to keep what we had as it is right now. And all of us, having seen the fire district at $2 and I think it was 3 cents or go down, knew that our constituents and citizens could not tolerate that. So we started saying, you need to go back and take a good hard look at where we can make some cuts that will have the least effect on our citizens. And so we did this exercise where they did, first they looked at $100,000 cuts in both public safety and parks. Then they looked at $250,000 cuts on both safety and parks, public safety and parks, and then $500,000 cuts with public safety and parks. And we had Adam Schultz, our financial advisor, they're kind of like taking a look at each levy every 10 cents and where those cuts would have to be. So it was pretty, so we started off at $2.11 down to $1.49, where a couple of councilors liked the idea of lowering it and taking off property taxes and putting it on a water bill, because that would get more people and, you know, cut out nonprofits. So we had quite the discussion, and ultimately we landed on $1.89 because it kept the level of service for the most part that we have today. So at $250,000 from both parks and public safety, what they were able to find is that they could increase from 5 to 6 year the vehicle replacement costs, and that took a big chunk of that. So by making that simple decision to put it into vehicle replacement, that was huge. And so then we looked at minor cuts in training here, cameras there, you know, a few things here and there, and we recognized that we really would not have to make any personnel cuts, and their services would remain to where they are today if we stayed at $1.89. If we went below that amount, then we had to start cutting personnel. And we just felt we could not cut personnel. We are right at, you know, right at a level where we are minimally fire. We have 2 people on each fire truck. Most places have 3. We are able to use our student firefighters as that 3rd person. And if we went into the bigger cuts to $1.79, we started losing some of those half of that student firefighter program, and that couldn't happen. So that's where we came up to $1.89, as we recognized we could make some cuts, we could do a few things leaner, but if we go below $1.89, then some of the partnerships get threatened, things like Women's Crisis Center, the money that we're put, and those are partnerships that help our extend our services by partnering with Women's Crisis Center, by partnering with St. Vincent de Paul, we were able to get more for our money. And if we have to take from those, then that has a huge impact. The sobering center. So we just realized how important those services were in our community to actually keep costs down and provide services that are preventative for public safety. So I will say that. If anybody wants to add, feel free.
All right, great. Well, we'll move into the next question. So at the $1.89 rate, there will still be adequate funding for police and fire then?
I'd be glad to start out with that. And Dennis, you may want to add to this. One of the things that I think we need to talk about is adequate. The term says what it is. It's adequate funding. And there are things such as those that Valerie mentioned that are very important and should be included in the budget that probably won't be. One example that came up during the budget hearings last May was a proposal to add a position in the evidence room. And we all know how important evidence is in the criminal justice system. And the police are responsible for maintaining that evidence in a way that makes it appropriate to use in a court of law. We were unable to fund that position. That was a serious loss in my view. But the $1.89 will provide adequate funding. Maybe not all that should be, but adequate.
And I will just add to that, one of the things that made me feel a little bit more comfortable with that, because you're right, it is hard to see those things go away when you know how valuable they are in the whole system. But one of the things is the county did just hire 2 detectives. And so up to this point, this Grants Pass Public Safety has had all the detectives. There are no detectives in the county. There have been none. So any of the research is either Oregon State Police or Grants Pass City. So we have been very strong through all this, and we have relied on our public safety. I'm encouraged, and I hope that by bringing the county up to speed and getting some more help from them, that will help keep us adequate. But I agree with Tom, that brings us to adequate. But we listened. I mean, we fought hard to just go up to $1.89 because there were so many people in the community and out there saying that, you know, in these troubling times, asking for more money would be difficult. So we've done everything we can to try to keep it adequate and to become more efficient.
Right, great, thank you. So
I think also that we still have to do some cutting, I think. You know, I think there's like $750,000 we still have to go back and cut. We're trying to cut around the edges though, rather than cut into the meat itself. So that's what that's what this 189 per thousand is based on.
So that actually moves me into my next question about the cuts that will be to the general fund and public safety levy, even if it passes at $1.89. Can you kind of go into depth on some of those cuts that you guys are looking at?
Well, I have in front of me the $250,000 eliminating, this is in the parks, I believe, some of the things that we took a look at is reducing some of the training, putting off some trail repairs, hoping that maybe some volunteers will come forward to help us with upkeep in trails. We'll reduce some of our contract landscaping, eliminate weekend parkways and movies, which some of that has just happened with COVID. And that's part of it too. With a lot of the COVID, there's been some things we haven't been able to do. So that may also impact the budget in terms of there may naturally come about some things that have gone by the wayside. An example I can say, there's no League of Oregon Cities, so the counselors are not traveling out of town, you know, so there will be some cost savings somewhere. So it will be interesting in the public safety, when I look at the 250,000, there is, we right now are taking a look at the fact that there's a chance that we might go out to diamond parking. We're looking to see efficiency-wise whether that is a way to conserve money. There will be slight budget cuts in raid, slight budget cuts in dispatch. Once again, the equipment replacement fund is a big part of that. But if you start going to the greater cuts, which is what we would have to do if this $1.89 doesn't pass, that's when you lose a police reserve, you lose part of your student firefighter program, police cadet program. Those are some pretty big things. Women crisis support, we would have to cut some of that support, as well as the sobering center. They get bigger and they take personnel. And so I think that's been what we've really tried not to do.
I would just add quickly that any of those cuts would result in a reduction in service. And the levy being requested will provide the current level of service, but it won't be able to enhance that level of service. So it's an essential part of the funding of public safety.
And to add on to that, a lot of the response times and those things are actually factoring into people's insurance rates, especially for fire. So if you start losing things like the current level of service and the response times, then there's always the chance too that your insurance rates are going to go up. So it's kind of a, that juggle, keeping a good level of service, which we have, is important for other reasons, because it brings down costs in other areas. Preventative.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Can you explain the overall funding sources for our public safety, just so people understand how that works?
Josie, let me start out on that one. Fully half of the budget for public safety comes from the city's permanent tax base. The $413 per thousand that is a part of the permanent tax base provides 50.2% of the budget for public safety. The local option levy that is on the ballot for November 3rd would provide an additional 21.7%, so 22% basically, will come from the levy. And that totals $5.7 million at $1.89. The remainder, which is 28% of the budget, comes from the general fund and a variety of other sources, including grants. There are many grants that the Public Safety Department has been able to win, if you will, that add to their budget, along with a variety of fees and transfers from the courts, so that the overall budget of $26 million is supported by that three-legged stool: the permanent tax base at 50%, the proposed levy at 22%, and the general fund, grants, and others, 28%.
All right, Dennis or Valerie, did you want to add anything?
Just that, like I said, this is an established three-stool system that was established in with the passage of measure, I think it was 50, and it was all based on tax rates of 1996 and 1997. So
Measure 50.
Yeah, measure 50. And so, there are other things there are other ways for communities to raise money. One of those is fees. And you've seen a lot of that in other areas. You've seen fees. Jacksonville has, like, with police and fire together, I think it's $55 a month for extra protection. Medford has a fee right now of, I think it's $9.52 for public safety. Other areas have fire districts. So not only do they pay a $4.13 for the city municipality, but they also pay $3.50 per month for a fire district. Our community chose not to have that fire district, and we respect that choice. We also do know that our community does not like the idea of us putting anything else on their water bill. We know we have a water plant out there we're going to need. We're saving money for that water plant. We're trying to be responsible in that manner. So we felt that we did not want to put anything onto that water bill. So we're going about it with that three-legged stool that was established in 1997. And we respect that our voters want us to go out for that levy and get their approval. So here we are.
All right, great, thank you. Can you explain what will happen if this levy does not pass?
Well, to be blunt, the public safety levy will go to zero. And one of the legs of that three-legged stool will be gone. That's a substantial hit. 22% of the budget will be cut if the levy doesn't pass. Now, to predict how that will be accomplished is pretty heroic. I think it's clear that a 22% reduction in funding for public safety would have devastating effects.
Yeah, I would add to that. It will have. I mean, obviously, we would probably have to go back out and ask for more money in May. But like I said, it would be devastating to lose a leg, 22%. And we would really have to go into our general fund to pull some money together, because public safety is our #1 priority, and we recognize that. So it would be painful. You know, you do what you have to do, but I do not want to go down that road.
Probably come back with just my guess would be we come back with $1.79 because voters have passed it before, but you know, voters have been in some hard times before, and yet they've still approved the public safety levy. I remember back in 2008, when we were in the middle of a recession, that even the council was kind of discouraged about putting it out there, putting the levy out there, and yet when they put it out there in May in the repeat, then they got 66% approval. So the citizens of Grants Pass have always been pretty good, I think, as far as supporting their public safety services.
I agree.
11 years.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So there has been some community concerns regarding city spending. Could you address those concerns?
I will start off with that because I, of course, being on the county council, you know, bear the brunt of those concerns. A couple of the concerns, and I can kind of turn them around to say, like Dollar Mountain. We know we've had a lot of people, you know, concerned about buying Dollar Mountain. But I will say, safety-wise, and this is part of the reason that I, in some ways, supported it, is because we have been able to acquire grants for fire mitigation up there, and that is a true issue in our region, as we know. This past year alone, I think we paid $132,000 fire mitigation. We have another, I think it's $350,000 coming from the state of Oregon in grants that we have received to further this next year to do more fire mitigation up in that area. So I think that is a positive. If I lived that close, I would feel more comfortable having it owned by a responsible tenant who will do the fire mitigation and take care of that. So I think that that's important. I think it was also bought in terms of long range, recognizing that we are an outdoor recreational, that's where our draw is. And, you know, there are a lot of people travel for biking and that sort of thing. And I think that that is something in the long range I think, you know, is not necessarily a bad thing. Another thing, I will go to the public safety building. You know, people, you know, there have been some added costs to that. I recognize, you know, that it's not wonderful, but at the same time, in 2016, I went over to the courthouse to see where our public safety was. And I went downstairs in that basement a 911 and saw a windowless room at the bottom of a seismically unsound building and saw that that was where our 911 dispatch was, and I was appalled. I went upstairs and saw the closets that the detectives were working out of, and recognized that our public service department deserved better and safer conditions. And so we went through the process of finding the building, of getting the building built. That is actually, we did not go out for a bond. We did take out a loan, but that will be paid off in 10 years. So the reality of it is that yes, in a way it came in over budget, but in the overall safety of our community, I cannot tell you what a benefit it is. In this recent fire activity, that emergency contact room is amazing. The services that were able to be provided there in a heartbeat, that could not have happened without that building being there. So there have been some, you know, I'm right there understanding that it's been difficult to watch some of these things, but I also know that the overall long range purchase and building that building is a plus for our public safety and our community. And if you want to add some, Dennis, go right ahead.
Well, while Dennis is preparing, let me add a couple of thoughts. One of the critical, and on the budget committee, we considered that question some time ago. It's been around for quite a while. And in the Parks Department budget, it's on page 136 of this funding has been growing rapidly. That is, the council heard this complaint and concern and reacted to it along with the budget committee and management staff, and the parks maintenance budget has been increased each of the last 3 years. And in the current budget, it's up 7.5% over the previous year. There is effort underway over several years to catch up with the maintenance that's been needed. I think that indicates both responsiveness to the public and an important point about how the budget can be shifted in ways to meet high priority needs, but that often goes unnoticed. And we still hear about this deferred maintenance, but the budget is supporting maintenance at the current level and should continue to do so.
Dennis, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there are a lot of expensive projects that are going on right now, and we don't really have it just decided not to upgrade your sewer plant or not to replace your water plant. I mean, those are pretty basic utilities for cities to operate. And then now we have the additional problem of keeping that pool. It's just going to could cost us like $1 million to $2 million also. And so we've got a lot of expensive things that unfortunately, I guess former councils decided to kick the can down the road on instead of acting on them. So we're the inheritors of those, I guess. So.
And I'll just add to that, that this budget, this levy that we're functioning on right now is operational expenses. So we've heard people say, well, why don't you just take some of the money from the sale of Rogue River Reserve, or why don't you just take this or that and throw it at it? But that's not, you don't take capital projects and throw the money into operation. That's just fiscally unresponsible. So this is operational expenses. we know we have some big time capital projects down the road, and we know that, you know, sometimes they have to slow down and sometimes they do, and we will, you know, that's, as Tom was saying, we are responsive to what needs to happen, you know, at certain times. But it is important that you understand that this levy is operational expenses, and so basic operational is what will be devastated.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. So with the recent devastating fires, how important is it to have funding for fire, and will more resources be needed?
Let me just start out with a brief comment. I think the urban wildland interface is a topic that is on everyone's minds these days. The urban wildland interface along the northwest side of Grants Pass includes the boundary of Dollar Mountain, now owned by the city, which in my view, it should be. Fire mitigation in that area is critical to protecting the city from the kind of wildfires that we've seen all around us. So yes, there is more to do. There should be more resources devoted to this effort. This levy request doesn't directly address that urban wildland interface, but I know everyone in that profession is working hard on that issue. And as Valerie mentioned, grants can be made available. The city is contracting with Grayback. There is much more that needs to be done, but the urban wildland interface all around the city needs to be addressed in the way Dollar Mountain is being addressed.
And I will add to that, because that was definitely in the forefront of our discussion when we were talking about, you know, what budget cuts might we have to make, you know, and that was brought up, how about if we were to shut down one of the stations part-time? And we realized we can't do that because of where we're located. That's my feeling, is that's an impossible thing to do. You know, when you look at statistics, Merland and Grants Pass are, you know, one of the most dangerous places in the state of Oregon. So there needs to be more money, and I'm hoping that the county will pull together a fire district to do something, because, you know, they're a big part of this as well. But having the city involved with the Dollar Mountain, and now being responsible for keeping it taken care of fire mitigation wise, that's, I think, a positive. We also have on staff, which I think, I'm not sure if everybody realizes this, but we have a full-time FireWise coordinator. I have his name right here. Anyway, what he does is he goes to neighborhoods and he will help your neighborhood become FireWise and be safe. He's very happy to do it if you call up the city. That is another position that a city has worked at to get that. His is a grant position, but it is a full-time position in the city of Grants Pass to address that. So it is a priority. I agree that going forward with what has happened, you know, we need to seriously look at everything we can do to make sure that, you know, at the meeting yesterday, I brought up, we need information. Are we set and ready to go if something serious like that happens in our community? Because we do recognize the importance of public safety and fire safety where we live.
I would add one more thing, Valerie, and that is the importance of partnerships, mutual aid. All of our neighboring fire departments or professional fire departments have mutual aid agreements, and those are critical for the safety of everyone in our communities. We have a lot of partnerships with agencies like Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service. All of these agencies working together with our fire professionals are working hard to protect our community. And these resources will help sustain that effort.
And I agree. As a matter of fact, we are currently in the process of putting together a memorandum of understanding with the BLM and the Forest Service to work together with Dollar Mountain to make sure that that is safe. And I know we have a great relationship with Rural Fire for mutual aid. And I would hate to see, you know, any of those threatened, and I would like to build on those, because I agree. It is the partnerships that we have that, and working together that truly makes a difference.
Valerie, my son will not forgive me if I don't say rural metro fire.
Did I say that wrong?
Rural metro fire.
Okay, yes, I know that's the one that we have. I always get there mixed up, but I'm very thankful for what they do with us. They're very.
All right, well, we'll move into our very last question. What are some goals public safety has for the next 3 years?
Well, let me say briefly that the goals are the result of the strategic planning process that the council undertakes every year. It really isn't public safety's goals, it's council goals, it's community goals. The strategic planning process starts actually in about November, runs through January, and the strategic planning goals are reviewed, revised, updated, and new ones are added. And of course, the number one strategic goal is to keep citizens safe. So that's certainly going to be, for public safety, a very high priority goal. There is also a goal the city has adopted, which is the development of prevention-focused community policing. That will set the stage for public safety goals and objectives as well. So the planning process leads to a set of goals and objectives, which leads to budget requests that come in the spring, which are implemented through projects and activities in the departments beginning in July. So the public safety department goals are built on the council's and community's strategic goals that are developed and revised every year.
Very important. And yes, and that's a great comment, Tom, because the budget committee is a part of it. We set the goals, people come to us, the community comes and tells us what they want. We take that information, turn it into, come up with our top goals. That is pushed together through the budget committee that takes a look at those and make sure that the money is available to prioritize those. I will say with our new Warren Hensman that one of the primary focuses that he has truly pushed for is the focused community policing and building public trust. That's what he came to us with last year, is the importance of building those relationships. You know, before COVID hit, of course, you saw the policeman going to the cop for a day for coffee. He's really trying to get out into the community to build that trust and to work to, to build a community of trust. He has a whole set of goals, you know, that he has sent out to me, which shows, I mean, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but it just shows the importance that he has put into community building and building trust and making sure that services that are necessary in our community are of high priority. And so it's been encouraging to see that. If you read the last Grants Passed Now, he did a great job of putting forth his goals and his priorities in our community. So like I said, I just have a real sense that he is working very hard. He would love to see 3 firefighters on each fire truck. I mean, I know that he has some of those goals and they may come forward in our next strategic planning, but I do know that he is working really hard to build trust and do things positively in our community.
I would like to add that the current leadership in the Department of Public Safety has brought a lot of innovative programs and new approaches to that work. And I have a great deal of confidence in the leadership, including Deputy Chief Lang Johnson, who is responsible for the fire division. I think we also should recognize that throughout the city, there is competent professional leadership that is responsive to the council's goals and applies budget resources to achieve them. I think that process is working and we should support it and continue it.
And I will add that process is getting ready to start, as Tom said. It starts clear back in November when our committees start thinking about what their priorities are. We will have a, I don't know, virtual or some sort of public forum asking community members to come forth and give their thoughts of what their priorities are. And that is a process that we as counselors really want people involved in. And I will say at any time, you can email, go to the city site, go to mayor and council and give us your thoughts, because they are truly appreciated.
All right, great, thank you. So that is the conclusion of our questions. Do you have any closing comments you would like to share before we end the forum?
Let me jump in. I again want to thank you, Josie, and the Chamber for sponsoring the forum, providing access to this information for the community. I think that's vitally important. One of the things that I ask through my volunteer work with the city is, what are we getting for the money that we're investing here? Do the benefits justify these costs? Is there data to support the notion that we are working toward achieving the goal of keeping citizens safe? So I looked at a report that was prepared and is prepared every year by the Public Safety Department. It's their annual report. And that report contains data on what's happening in our community as a result of the policing, particularly, that's been underway. And the data is revealing. Robbery is down 25%. Motor vehicle theft down 31%. Vandalism down 30%. And over the last 4 years, burglary rates are down over 60%. That's startling evidence of effectiveness in the use of the resources being made available to the Public Safety Department. So my conclusion is the benefits clearly exceed the cost, and we need to sustain that effort. It's not over. I'm not Pollyanna here. There's a lot of work to be done. We have myriad of problems in our community, but the Public Safety Department are the first in people in dealing with all of those issues. And they have demonstrated success, and we need to sustain that success and fund them for another 3 years and beyond at least $1.89 a thousand.
And I will just add to that, that in this age of defund the police, I think that people in our community recognize and value the police and the fire and the Public Safety Department that we have built through the years. They're high on the partnerships. A lot of the services they have partnerships with Options. They have partnerships with the Women's Crisis Center. They have partnerships with Hearts with a Mission. They have done things in our community to build that trust. And so I think we all recognize how important they are and how 10 cents per thousand is so minimal. I think, you know, we can go through a million scenarios, but I think one of them is, you know, $2 a month to keep providing that service is nothing compared to what they do in our community. So I will just go ahead and move forward and say the same thing. We really ask you to vote yes, because we do have public safety as our #1 priority. It is the major thing that we do, and we will continue that promise.
Vote yes.
Dennis, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to bring up the fact that, like the public safety building, I mean, we've been discussing that for, I'm not sure if Tom realizes this or Valerie even, but we just started discussing that 5 years ago. It wasn't just something we came up with in one day and said, hey, let's go buy a building for public safety. I mean, that's been something we've been working on for 5 years. It came up in 2015 when I first joined council, and it was brought up by, I think at that time, Jim Goodwin with the juvenile department, and he just thought that the lodgings and accommodations we had for police were terrible, and they were. I mean, they as our landlord, the county wasn't fixing up the building. They weren't do anything. There wasn't any seismic work going on. And so that building was going to just pancake, and that's the worst time that you don't have a 9/11 service is if you have a catastrophe. I mean, it's, you know, it's like when everybody's looking for somebody to help them, there's nobody to help them. So I just wanted to go back and reiterate that these aren't just short-term decisions. And anytime you tear into an old building, older building, you're going to find things that you didn't expect to find, and usually they're expensive. So, like you're retrofitting anything, you'll find out that, gee, there's too much water here, or this doesn't quite work here. You know, it's something we're taking care of as we go along. We're not being big spendthrifts and trying to accumulate all this territory or anything. We're just trying to handle problems as they come up. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to, and what the public safety levy is all about too.
That's so true, Dennis. And I think it's important to recognize that public safety is a part of a complex web of the criminal justice system. And particularly the 911 Communications Center is really the hub of all of the activity around public safety and criminal justice. And having a safe and modern, fully equipped 911 Communications Center is critical in that effort. So I think what you're describing as at least a 5-year effort to build a new building is just part and parcel of the effort being made in the community to strengthen our public safety and criminal justice system. So that's a very important element.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Tom, Valerie, and Dennis, for joining us today. This was very informative.
Thank you, Josephine.
And this will be on the November 3rd ballot. And if you are not registered to vote, you still have till October 13th. We strongly encourage you to get registered and vote on November 3rd. Public safety impacts all of us, whether it's your business individually. So please get out there and vote. And thank you so much for being on the panel today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.